Hello and welcome to this new Android development tutorial. This is part 1 on how to make a music player for Android. So let's start. We begin by opening Android Studio, then we will click on Start a new Android Studio project. Then we'll click on Empty Activity and then on the Next button. As the name of this application, we will write Music Player. Okay, so we have the name. Now make sure that the language you select is Java and the minimum API level, this time we will select 14. Of course, we can change this later if we need to. We will click on Finish and we will wait for the IDE to set up our Android Studio project. So the Android Studio project is now being set up by the Android Studio IDE. So we will wait for it. And I also want to tell you that I will be running the application on an emulator in the left side of the screen. You can do it in an emulator too if you want, or you can actually run it on a real Android device. So basically, what we have to do in this music player application is actually pretty simple. We need to read the storage of the device and find music files and then list them on a list view with its respective adapter, and then we will enable the user to play those files. Okay, great. So the IDE has finished loading the project, and the first thing we will do is we will change the layout file that comes as default. So we'll go to the left side, we will open the res folder, then we will open the layout folder. We will right click on the activity main.xml file and we will click on delete. We will make sure these both boxes are unchecked and then we will click in OK. So now the file is being deleted, as you can see. And what we will do now, we will create a new file but with a different root element. For that, we'll go again to the layout folder, we will right click on it, then we will click on new layout resource file. Okay, and as file name we will write activity main, so the same name it had previously, but on root element we will delete the default value and we will type linear layout. Then we will press on OK and we will wait for the IDE to generate the code. As you can see, this is the code the IDE generated. In order for us to actually look at the code, we will click on the text view mode right here. And as you can see, we have our linear layout ready to be used. So right now, just to check if everything works okay, I will send the app to the emulator and make sure that everything looks as we want. So basically, this file will enable us to set up how we want the application to look. Okay, so this is the XML file, the layout file. And the Java file will enable us to set how the application behaves. So right now the emulator is being initialized right here, so we have to wait a couple of minutes for it to boot up and to run the app. So as I was telling you, we have this file which enables us to create the user interface of our Android application. And if we add IDs to the elements of this interface, we can then retrieve those elements using their IDs from the code, which is the main activity, that Java file right here. Okay, so we will wait for the app to run and we will check if it is displaying the right content. Okay, so I will switch to the emulator right here and I will wait for it to boot up. As you can see, it says phone is starting. So this emulator is running Android Pie, Android version 9.0, which is API 28. Okay, so it's the latest one as time of recording this video. And as you can see, the app should be almost ready. As you can see, there's two processes running right here, which is the Gradle view running, and we have these updating indices. Okay, let's see. Now it's installed in the application. Okay, great. So if we go to the emulator, we can see that we have our app right here, and it's actually working as we expect. It's empty because we haven't really added anything to it. So right now we will switch back to the Android Studio IDE, and what I want to do now is to delete these two bars because we want kind of a cleaner look of our application. We want a completely wide screen. Okay, so to hide those two bars, what we will do is we'll go under the res folder and then under values folder, and we will open the styles.xml file. So right here, we can customize the actual theme of the application. For that, we will go inside the style brackets, and we will type item name, and we will type window full screen, and we will set this value to true. Okay, so that what is that doing? It's hiding the top bar. Okay, and now what we're gonna do is we're gonna hide the title. So we're gonna say no title, window no title, and we will also set these to true. So with these two lines I just wrote, we are hiding both of the two bars we saw in the emulator. To check if it works, I will run the app again and make sure that it looks as we want. Okay, it's being installed, it's running right now, and as you can see, it's empty. Everything is empty, just as I want it to be. So right now we can go back to the Android Studio IDE, and we will close this styles.xml file. Now we will open the Gradle scripts file that will enable us to customize and clean up it a bit more. We will open the second one, which is the build.gradle file, which is module app. Okay, make sure you open the second, the one that says module app. Okay, so we open this, and this is kind of an abstraction level in which we set the configuration for application. Since this is a simple application, we are just learning, we can simplify this file a lot more, so you can actually, by having a simpler view of it, you can actually understand what's going on. So this line is for testing. We won't be testing it with using the unit tester library. So we can delete this line, and this bracket, this build type bracket, we don't need it. So we don't need it because we are not deploying it and we don't have custom configurations for it. Okay, now here on the dependencies, there's a lot of stuff that we don't really need about this. The only one we need is this one, the app-compat library. So we can delete all the others, but not that one. So we will delete all these. And as you can see, now the file is a lot more simple and easier to read. Okay, so what this is saying basically is that we're using API 28 to compile the application. The minimum SDK we're targeting is 14 and the target is 28. The version code of the app is 1 and the version name is 1.0. And the only dependency we're using is the app-compat one. After we have modified these, we will click on Sync Now here at the top. If you don't find that button, you can also click on this elephant button that I'm selecting with the mouse pointer. Okay, so now we can also close this file. And to make sure everything works again, I will run the app again and check that it still works fine. So let me see. I'm installing the app and I'm running and it still works fine. So let's actually start with the coding of our application. Okay, great. So the first thing we will do is we will work on the layout file of our application. Okay, as I told you, the layout file enables us to create UI elements using the XML kind of scripting language. Okay, so after we do that, we can access the code from Java. Okay, so let's start working on it. So we will go to our activity main.xml file, and since what we want to do is list the music files or the audio files, kind of MP3 files that exist on the device storage, we will use a list view. So we will open an element and type list view, and the width of this element will be match parent, the height will be 0 dp, and the weight will be 1. Okay, we can close this here to make it more clean to see. And now we will add an ID to this object. So we're gonna type ID and we will call it list view. Okay, so now we have added a list view right here. For apart from listing the music files, we want to kind of course, play the music file and maybe show controls of maybe stop and play the file again. But maybe we can implement that later. So for now, this is the only thing we will add. Later we can complete this file. So we will switch back to our main activity.java, and here we start reading what's going on. So as default, the IDE generates for us this file and adds the onCreate method, in which the only thing it does is set the content view to our XML file. Okay, so we are reading files from the storage, from the device storage, and the Android operating system requires us to ask for permission, starting in API 23 or Marshmallow and above. Okay, so to ask for permission, we will go to our manifest file right here. We will open this. As you can see, we have sort of warning. We can ignore that by clicking on suppress the warning if you want. And we also have here the activity definition. The orientation of the activity will be portrait, so we're gonna say screen orientation and set that to portrait. Okay, and apart from that, we will go, we'll tie the application tag, and we will open the user's permission element. The first one will be set to read external storage. Okay, so we're reading the external storage right here, which is the permission we need in order for our application to run. Then once we have defined the permission on the Android manifest.xml file, we can go to our main activity.java file and actually start initializing everything we want our application to do. Okay, so first of all, we have to be able to check permissions at runtime. As I told you in Android 23, APK 23 or Marshmallow, we are required to do just that. So to do that, we will do the following. After the onCreate method, we will define the permissions we want to ask. For that, we're gonna type private static final string, string is capital S, so string array. So we will define the permissions as an array of strings, and we will call this uppercase permissions. Okay, we will set these, remember to end the line with a semicolon, and here we will specify the actual permissions our app requires. To specify the permissions, we will do the following. We will type manifest dot permission dot read external storage. Okay, so this is the permission we need. Okay, it says that field requires API level 16. So to fix this warning, we will go to our build Gradle file we opened previously, the one we have simplified, and we will change the minimum SDK version from 14 to 16. We will click on sync now. We will wait for the sync to be completed. Okay, now we can close this file, go back to our main activity.java, and we can see that the warning has disappeared, which is awesome. Okay, then that we have defined the permissions we want, we also want to define a request code so we can know which permission we requested and kind of control the flow of the permission request process. Okay, so to do that, we're gonna say and create the following variable: private static final int, and we will call this request permissions. And here we have to enable or assign these int and a kind of a unique ID. It doesn't really matter. Maybe I will tell it to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Actually, any number you want. Okay. And lastly, we have to define a variable, an int variable again, that will store the permissions, the amount of permissions we are requesting. In this case, is just one. We'll call this permissions count. Okay, and we will set this to 1. Okay, great. So as default, in some devices, the permissions are automatically granted, but in others, they are not. So we will check if the permissions are denied by creating the following method. We're gonna say private boolean are permissions denied. Okay, we will open this method and we will create a for loop as follows. So we're gonna say for int I equals 0, I less than permissions count. Okay, and we'll say I plus plus. We open the for loop and we write the following logic. So we will check if the permissions are granted or not. To that, we're gonna say if check self permission, and as the parameter we will pass permissions at I. So we access the string array of the permissions and we are pointing to the element I. Okay, if permissions at I is different, if check self permissions at I is different than package manager dot permission granted. So if it's different than permission granted, we will return true, which will tell us the permission has been denied. And after we run this for loop, and if it hasn't returned, we will return false, which means the permissions are not denied, which means they are granted. As you can see, we have a warning right here on the check self permissions line, which says call requires API level 23, but we will be calling this only in API level 23, so we can ignore this by clicking in this warning sign and then on suppress link new API annotation. We click on that and this line is added and now the warning is gone. So that's it for this method right here. We will continue right now. And after the user checks or clicks on allow or deny permission, what we have to do is get the result of that permission, if the user allowed it or denied. So to do that, we will do the following. We will override public void on request permissions result. Okay, and inside these we have some parameters that are passed. The first one will be an int, which will pass the request code, so you can say int request code. The second one will be a string array. Oops, what I just did, I delete this, so let me read it again. It's a public void on request permissions result, and inside this we have int request code. We also have string array, and we have the permissions we are asking for, so permissions, and we also have an int array that will return the results of those permissions. So we're going to call it grant results. We will open the method and we will call the super method. So we're going to say super dot on request permissions result, and we will pass the same parameters we received. So the first one will be request code, then will be permissions, and then will be grant results. Okay, so great. Now we can make our lives easier by using the previous method we wrote, which is our permissions denied. So we will check it right here. So we're going to say if our permissions denied, this means that the user has denied the permission. And since that permission is a must, the app cannot work without it. So if the user denies the permission, we want to clear the application data and close the app, which will enable us to keep asking for the permission every time the user opens the app again. So to accomplish that, we will do the following. We will open two parentheses, and the first one we will write activity manager, okay, and outside the first one we will create another parenthesis. So the activity manager is kind of the casting object we're casting into, and inside this second parenthesis we will type this that get system service, okay, and as the parameter of this we will pass activity service. Okay, we go after these three parentheses and we type that clear application user data, and this is basically the line that will clear the data right here. So we have activity manager, get system service, account service. No, it's not account service, sorry, I'm wrong, it's activity service. So let me correct this very quickly. So activity service, and we then type clear application user data. So again, this warning should be silenced because we're calling only when we should. So we're gonna go and say suppress linked new API annotation, and the warning is gone. In that case, what we will do is we will recreate the activity after that. So the first bracket is when the user denies the activity, and when the user allows the permission, we want to call the onResume method, because in that method we will do all the initialization. So we just type onResume and we'll leave it there. Okay, so now we have basically created our basic method right here. So now let's override the onResume method. Okay, so we're gonna go and say add override protected void on resume. Okay, inside the method we'll call the super method super.onResume. Okay, and inside here what we will do is we will check if we have to request or not the permissions. Okay, to do that we will do the following. We'll go and type if build dot version dot sdk int is greater or equal to build that version codes.m, which means marshmallow. So if this if statement is true, we also will check if the permissions are denied. So to check the permissions are denied, we will say and, as I'm writing right here, so and are permissions denied, so we call the method. So if those two conditions are true, we will request for permissions. To do that, we're gonna type request permissions, okay, and as the first parameter we'll pass permissions, which is our array of permissions, and a second one will be the request code, which is the request permissions variable. Okay, so after these we will return, because we don't want to keep initializing if we don't have the required permissions. Okay, so right now we have our basic kind of app that asks permissions. So to check that everything works as we want, we will run the application to check if it actually works as expected. So now I'm compiling the app and sending it to the emulator. The emulator runs the app, and as you can see, it appears this dialog that says allow music player to access photos, media, and files on your device, and here the user can click either deny or allow. If the user clicks on deny, then the app is closed and the application data is cleared. And now if the user goes again on the music player application, it asks the app again, so the user can keep denying and keep opening the app. Let me see. Oh, the Android has a problem here. The emulator has a problem. So the user can keep opening the app. Oops. Pixel Launcher keeps stopping. So we have a sort of a problem here with the emulator. Let me check now. Okay. I will restart the emulator to hope it will hopefully be fixed. So we can say restart. So this is the bug of the Android emulator that I'm running right here. So these emulators often comes with bugs. So right now I'm restarting the application to make sure it works as we want. So we wait for the emulator to be restarted. As you can see here, we have the Google logo and it's been restarted. So basically what we did in this tutorial is we set up the Android Studio project, we simplified the layout file, we simplified the Gradle build file, and we are requesting the permissions in the Android manifest and also on code. And right now the emulator is back and I will run the app again. So I click on music player, so it still keeps crashing. Let me see, music player, and now it's working. So now allow music player. So as you can see, it keeps asking until the user allows the permission. So I will click on allow, and as you can see, now the app stays opened, which is great. Now if we go back to our IDE and we continue looking at the code, we can see that the on the onResume method, on the return, we have a warning right here that says return is unnecessary as the last statement in a void method. Okay, which is true, but that won't be the last statement because we will keep writing some stuff here. So what we will do now is start initializing the music player. For that, we will create a global variable that will be private not really static, so private boolean is music player init, so which means is music player initialized, and as default, of course, that will be set to false. And right here inside the onResume method, we will check for that flag. So we're gonna type if negation is music player init, which means if music player is not initialized, then we will initialize the music player. So right here, the first thing we will do is change the flag. So as the last statement of this if bracket, we will go and say is music player in it, and we will set this to true. Okay, awesome. Right. If you remember on the activity main.xml file, we created a list view. So we will access this list view right now from the Java code. To access the list view, we will do the following. We go and say final list view. We will call it list view. And we will set these to find view by ID, r.id.list view. Okay, great. So right now we have created our list view, so we're accessing this list view from code, okay, which is great, right? So in the next tutorial, we will learn how to set up this list view, create a parameter, we will read files and all, and everything else we require to make this app working. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I see you in the next one. Bye.